Opening up, just looking at this straight away. First thing we're going to be looking at is if there's a deviation, because something we did notice when we saw the start of the Beastie and MarineLorD series is they had, Beastie and Viper series, rather, they had very differing openings to the English mirror, right?
Yeah, and this is something that we have been discussing there. Like, with the English, you have a lot of different things that you can think about. How many farms are you adding? When are you grabbing your wheelbarrow? How aggressive are you with a longbow play? Are you thinking about some early man-at-arms here to put up some pressure? So many things to consider, and the players can deviate quite well with their build orders from one another.
Now, first thing I'm kind of eyeballing is whether they went for the double scout, and they do. I love this kind of deviation, right? Previously, a lot of English players would have just floated one scout. They would have been content with that. But I love that these players have started to identify the critical detail here. Like, you need to be seeing everything your opponent's doing, and due to the way that Dry Arabia generates, one scout doesn't cut it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's also about scouting all those neutral resources. So, as you pointed out, you want to see what your opponent is doing. You're committing one scout to that early game. So you can use the second scout to scout the neutral resources, which are so important lying all across the map. Because we have seen this more and more, especially in English Mirror, that the players love to expand for those proxy bases. And if the English players are playing a very infantry-heavy composition, early game it's difficult to punish those proxy bases. So finding those neutral resources is also one of the reasons why players like to go for two scouts now, even with the English.
Now, the interesting thing as well is playstyles, right? When we saw Viper and Beastie, it was a very retracted approach to the game. It became more about booming. While Viper's not against that type of style of play, I feel like MarineLorD is going to force him into more feudal aggression compared to the previous opponent, right?
Yeah, that is definitely a point. Although we have seen MarineLorD playing very eco-focused approaches as well. In fact, in the winner's bracket finals, which he played against Beastie, he actually played Altai with, for example, a rather eco-focused Abbasid 2 town center build. So it's not like MarineLorD doesn't do eco-focused builds, but as you pointed out, he's much more of an aggressor and a late game focusing player, or an early game focusing player rather, than Beastie is. So Viper is gonna have to adapt that and change up his playstyle accordingly.
Yeah, to the villain comparisons before, he's like that guy who has to poke the hero at the beginning of the story, right? Like, MarineLorD likes to take this slight edge. To quote him, I'm a kind of a percentage player. I feel like if I can get a slight edge at the beginning, I can expand that with my skill as the game goes on. So I wouldn't be surprised if we at least see a few initial lombos, maybe an outpost attempt. And one cool thing to highlight that I've seen Viper do a lot on the rank ladders, he likes to go for the early aggression as English and drop proxy Raxes right next to his opponent's base. So that is a potential option for the red player here.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility. We talked about this one. Viper is playing a very opportunistic game. So if he sees that his opponent is not putting up much aggression, he's going to go very greedy on the eco boom. But if he sees that his opponent is not putting up that much defense and he himself is going for a eco-focused approach, he also is going to play very aggressive. So he has a very adaptive play style, and that's part of the reason why it's difficult to play against him.
I mean, see that in the opening, right? The fact that MarineLorD hasn't dropped his farms. Now that he scouts out what Viper has done, he'll start to invest. But notice that he was actually holding on to that investment a lot longer than Viper was.
Looks like MarineLorD was also quite successful finding sheep. You see over here, it's 13 for him, whereas for Viper, it's going to be substantially less. Indeed, that is just going to be 7. On the bright side of things, Viper does have the farms, and he is going for the Vortex layout, as you see over here. That farm on the northern side of that mill, that's just shifted one tile inwards towards that town center. That's something that Vortex started doing, and it has a slight efficiency increase compared to just having the standard 4-2 farm distribution of farms.
Yeah, I believe someone actually tested this, and it came out that across about 8 minutes, you were getting 8 food more with the 4 farms. Shout out to This Is Not a Chestnut. I believe he was the one who actually put in the work to discover that. So it's a small amount, but obviously over a long period of time, it's still an advantage.
It ain't much, but it's honest work.
Yep. And also, it keeps your villagers more protected, right? Like, you've got more villies near the TC as opposed to the old standard build, which is what MarineLorD seems to be doing.
Yeah, MarineLorD is going for the more conventional approach over here. He's building a council hall with only 2 villagers, so there is no rush to Feudal Age. That is also something that makes me believe that he doesn't think that Viper is going to play aggressive in this one. Viper is also playing with only 2 villagers on the council hall, so slow and steady wins the race, I guess. Both players will just play a very slow and eco-focused approach here in the first few minutes of the game.
Feels like it makes sense, right? Seems to be the more successful build, I'd say, compared to the old one, because the issue with rushing into Feudal is if you didn't set up like this before you got to Feudal, you usually couldn't afford a non-stop push out of Lombos and also Spears. Feels like this deviation, delaying yourself by a minute or two, gives a much stronger timing around the 10-minute mark, which feels less gambly for the English player than the previous build.
Yeah, I agree with you on this one. It looks like now MarineLorD is coming in with the scouts. He loves to do that. He loves to put up pressure on those gold miners. And speaking of gold miners, Viper is pretty heavy on those. But of course, it's English villagers. They will just fire away with their bows, and MarineLorD is gonna be like, okay, I might as well leave.
Yes, the shooting, as I like to refer to it here, is just the peppering arrows. It's only 5 damage per shot, but you know, the scouts, they don't really have much protection against range fire. And although they heal, it's a slow heal. So it'll frustrate his opponent. In fairness, MarineLorD will see this as a slight edge, right? He is at least delaying the gathering slightly every time they choose to fire arrows instead of tapping their axes.
The main deviation that we can see, though, is going to be the number of farms. Look at that. MarineLorD only sitting at 3, whereas for Viper, he's at, I think, 8 or 9 already. In fact, it's actually 10 now. So Viper is much more heavily focused on the farming eco, and that's going to obviously skyrocket his food eco. But MarineLorD looking to put up some pressure over here, and I wonder if Viper has scouted this. He's going to scout that. You can see on the minimap, the Death Scout is able to intercept those longbows. Gotta love how Viper plays it in the Stealth Forest.
The interesting part is whether Viper saw deep enough to see the farm layout. Because as you highlighted, like that's a lot less farms. It does mean MarineLorD's going to draw it because your previous comment about how many sheep Viper got. So it's going to be a hard-fought transition. But instead, look what MarineLorD is actually doing. It's all a bait. Like, he pushes a few longbowmen to force Viper to react. And while he does that, he's saving up. He's almost got enough for Castle Age.
Yeah, I love that. The thing is that the farms pay off rather fast, but if you just focus all your villagers on sheep, initially it's better because you don't even have to chop a lot of wood. You just focus all your villagers on food and gold. And because Viper's scout was in that stealth forest, one thing that he didn't check is how many gold miners MarineLorD has. And because of that, as you pointed out, MarineLorD can bait him into thinking that he is going to play very aggressive, while in reality, MarineLorD is working towards Castle Age, and what does that Castle Age give you? It's giving you the King's Palace, a building that you can use to build up an eco lead.
Yeah, and you can see that Viper's started to cut it off now, right? He's like, 2 longbowmen is enough. I scout out what's happening. I can't see any more reinforcements. He understands what this is turning into. It does, however, mean Viper is inherently going to be playing from behind. Now, MarineLorD does still have to make a hefty transition to farms, but as we know, the English, they get a 50% discount. It's only 37 wood per farm, so it's not going to set him back too much.
And MarineLorD is playing a very, very compact base over here, so he doesn't even want to give Viper the opportunity to potentially deny that King's Palace. He's not dropping it on his gold mine, he's not dropping it on one of the hunts. He just wants it as compact as possible. He wants that to go up, guaranteed. Viper is focusing a lot on the farming, and the good news for him is that he's not far away in Castle Age timing, though, so while MarineLorD is going to beat him to Castle, Viper is not going to be that much behind. The bigger question is, what exactly is MarineLorD going to be able to accomplish with that first stable and the first knights coming out of that?
That's the thing. It had to be knights here. Like, some people maybe look at the man-at-arms go, ooh, man-at-arms look really good these days, but it's too slow. I think the idea for MarineLorD is because he has knights, he can actually gap close and use that tech up advantage. Whereas if he went for someone like man-at-arms and lombos, he might get a force that could end the game. But it's gambling on the fact that Viper won't be teching up himself and he won't be building up a military force to defend himself, which is just very unlikely.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is that the men-at-arms take a lot of time to get to the enemy base, and by the time the men-at-arms arrive, Viper is going to have defensive forces. He can drop an archer range, pop out some crossbows, or he can go for his own barracks, pop out some men-at-arms, and ultimately you won't be able to capitalize on that Castle Age timing. In the meantime, Viper is also going up himself, but this is where knights come into play for MarineLorD, because those will reach the opponent's base a lot faster, and they could easily pick up 1 or 2 villagers before Viper has the forces to stop them.
The interesting thing is what happens a minute or 2 after that, though. If you look at where Viper's put his King's Palace, it's a little bit looser. The importance of this is that his farm workers will be able to garrison somewhere, right? That's the weakness we have to look at from MarineLorD's base. If they both go knights and they both go to each other's base, MarineLorD's going to have to expand away from the safety of garrison points because he's condensed all of his landmarks on top of each other.
Yeah, indeed, that's a great point out there. So there's a lot more safety associated with this one for Viper. And the second component is that, yeah, sure thing, the farmers will have somewhere to garrison, but talk about the farmers here. Viper's got a tremendous amount of farmers, whereas for MarineLorD, he still only has 3. So it's not just about the safety for those villagers, it's also about the fact that MarineLorD is yet to make a farm transition, whereas Viper pretty much has a sustainable food income for the rest of the game, essentially.
Yeah, now you start to get the real value from it. Being up in Castle Age, remember, every time you tech up, you get an extra 5% gathering rate on all farms under the influence of the mill. So this is really where it starts to pay off. And it's where we should start to see him surge forward of MarineLorD's eco, despite the fact that MLord does have a 3-villager lead.
Yeah, obviously that is coming from that Castle Age advantage that he has had. Knights are roaming the map as well, trying to pick off some villagers. And there might be a chance here. I love how MarineLorD is using the scouts as well to try and find targets for himself.
Yeah, this is the one thing that's exposed as well. So he finds the one weak point, but Viper, quick to react, will peel back, respond with his own knights, and you have to instantly disengage. Even if it was a one knight on one knight, one side has that attack speed buff, the other does not.
And of course, Viper has an easier time reinforcing this one, so it's going to be faster for Viper to get that second knight in there to overpower you than you can. And look at that, the scout is still there, seeing exactly what kind of reinforcements MarineLorD is bringing. And you just love that that scout was just chilling there and is like, okay, he's coming right next to me, he's coming right next to me, I'm just gonna swing my axe, whatever.
What I love as well is that Scout actually has a little partner in crime. Like, the sheep's in there as well. So he has good spread over the whole area in that stealth forest, although it does mean he's more likely to be seen. However, considering how little your vision is when you run through there with knights, you do have to be looking to see it. It's very difficult to catch in a glimpse on the minimap.
Yeah, and it's very unlikely that MarineLorD knows about that scout over there. Villager gap is still steady. We could see a monastery dropped by MarineLorD a couple of minutes ago, so he's working towards those relics, and Viper is also building his own right now. So this is turning into a relic race. Currently, MarineLorD has a slight edge because of his economy, but look at that wraparound by Viper.
That's really important as well, because the other edge he had is in the Knights department, right? He's 2 ahead. But now heavy damage for the second time onto MLord's Knights starts to pivot this in favor of Viper. It means he's actually reaching a point where he could come out and contest these relics, the worst case situation for MLord.
Yeah, exactly. 8 knights right now versus 6. And let's talk about the relic spots over here, because those seem relatively even. 3 in the middle parts of the map, 1 in the southern corner. Where's the 4th one at? Right now it's under the control of MarineLorD. So very even distribution. Huge shout out to Lord Petito, our admin, working behind the scenes, making sure that the seas that we play on, or rather the players play on, are fair, because this one is as fair as it could possibly be.
Yeah, he works relentlessly. I mean, I think he doesn't get too much assistance with it either. You know, we definitely don't pay him enough. We keep saying we're going to give him exposure. No, I'm kidding. They pay him. They pay him. I shouldn't make those jokes. People will get the wrong idea. But look at the Relic banker. Already one in. Viper's on his way back now as well. And the wall low. Uh-oh. Not quick enough.
Nope.
It's going to be denied.
Oh, we all know how that goes.
Right? It never works.
It never does.
He's being forced back here. Like, this is going to be frustrating because he will have to go idle on all the farms here. There's a lot of knights, so if you go for the dive, there's no way Viper can hang around. And still that gold line that's exposed, right? Like, it's so far out. One villager goes down, forces the contest. Viper does have the attack speed buffer, but the number advantage in favor of MarineLorD, and also tanking with the scouts. Wasting a lot of these free shots, giving the edge over means that MLord is going to force a retreat out of Viper. And he might actually have to go idle on some of these farms. Yep,
Yeah,
there
and
it
you
is,
see,
switch over.
ooh, there's a counterattack though, so both sides losing villagers over here, but MarineLorD seems to be getting better trades here. That's the thing, right? He's killed like 2 or 3 villagers, whereas for Viper, I don't think that he killed more than 1 or 2, and the villager gap is actually in the favor of MarineLorD once again.
Yeah, and Viper's just kind of throwing away a trickle of knights here and there, right? They are even on knights, but obviously MarineLorD, he's gone for this more kind of Falcon Punch approach, right? I'm not going to just scratch at you with 3 or 4 different groups of knights. He's just riding in with a dominant force each time.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Viper tried to wall off the flanks, so Viper is aware of that possibility, rather, but he couldn't finish the wall in time, and right now it still is lying open. He's yet to finish those walls.
It's actually kind of interesting the way that MarineLorD's played this as well. It feels like he's got Viper fully reactionary to these raids. Like, yes, we had that 1 or 2 knights going in top side, but overall, you can see MarineLorD's very confident. He doesn't feel this necessity to wall himself in at all. Meanwhile, Viper, he can find her right here, tries to take the Relic, instantly gets snatched by MarineLorD, and that's the important detail, right? He's been patrolling left and right just outside of Viper's base this entire time.
Exactly, and you can't understate the importance of that one scout in that group, because the knights, we talked about that, they have terrible line of sight, but that scout helps acquire targets so much. Volo attempt coming out here, and it's gonna be a... He gets it! He got it!
Yeah, he gets it. There was no lance. That's the difference. If your knight lances, you'll kill him. If he doesn't, yeah, good luck with that. So that'll pivot slightly in favor of MarineLorD. He's sitting up at 12 knights to the 11. And also the Relic situation. Now about to bank his third one. It's looking like Viper might be stuck as a one Relic boy.
Yeah, this is a problem and growing concern for Viper, because we talk about that 6-villager lead that MarineLorD currently has. Now MarineLorD also completed his farm transition, and you see that MarineLorD is heading out towards that final Relic on the southern part. I think Viper should be able to pick that up before MarineLorD reaches that position, but it's still going to be a Relic advantage.
Oh, wow. Look at this one knight. Like, he could actually do enough damage to kill the priest, especially considering MarineLorD now knows about it. Look at this. The fight was going his way. The peel off the left and the right. And he's baiting him around. Like, if he gets him out of position, he can still snipe this Monk as he returns the Relic. But it seems like it's not worth the risk to him. He respects the fact that Viper is starting to reach that critical mass in knights.
And Viper also picked off MarineLorD's Monk over here, so even if he kills the Monk, he would just delay the inevitable, because he would need to make a new Monk to pick that up himself. He has to settle with the fact that it is 3 versus 2 with the Relic count. Looks like the Knights will actually charge into each other, but the numbers are way better here for Viper.
Oh, MarineLorD's actually got a healthy amount. Like, Viper, some of his Knights aren't in this fight, but he decides to peel back, because the thing we have to know is when you look at the health bars, most of the low health Knights of Viper have already been killed. MarineLorD's starting to take heavy damage, but the reinforcements coming in. He can turn around for the fight, and he gets the charge off. Good damage done. Viper tries to spread the line. Plenty of his troops are AFK in the backside here. Will force the retreat away.
It's just knight on knight action, and it's just going to be a back and forth for so long, because Viper is now bringing his own reinforcements, and it's a dance forward and then backwards, because every time you get close to someone's base, he's gonna have the chance to get in some reinforcements and swing the battle in their favor.
The crazy part is actually that MarineLorD's eco is notably better, but yet he's surrendering the Knight lead occasionally. Like, we're seeing it time and time again. Nat switched back to MLord by 1, but frequently when we're looking up, Viper's had 1 or 2 extra Knights in the field, and look at this one Knight! The Peasant Rebellion just trying to deal with him in his base. He doesn't want to send the Knights back because he understands if he does that, it surrenders the midfield over to Viper.
Yeah, but instead, now he lost some of his villager lead, and look at that. All that 6-villager advantage that he has had was nullified by that single knight running into his eco. 76 villagers versus 75. Viper picked up the second relic. This is as close as it could get.
And that's very different from the previous series we had today, right? In that series, it was all about this static, slow-moving force. Wall up, move in, siege down. Now, it's just about cavalry. It's just the constant spam in the midfield, and it's a case of who's going to blink first or who's maybe not going to be paying attention and miss micro at that critical second.
Yeah, I mean, if you think back to that game that we have seen between Viper and Beastie, it was also the moment that Beastie started adding cavalry, like very late game, suddenly it started swinging in his favor, because the cavalry gives it extra mobility, that high upside that you can use to just damage the opponent's economy in a quite meaningful way. And this is exactly what the other players are thinking about here. You go for infantry here, you will lose your mobility and you will get raided to death.
Viper doesn't realize what he's about to do here. MarineLorD had vision on this on the side. He's going to force him in the choke point, turn around, and cut him a piece. Split up. 3 different groups here. Being held back by the Knights on the left side. Villagers being butchered, will be peeled back. First line's gone. Second line trying to go deeper, forcing the garrison out. MarineLorD with a lot of idle economy and still losing a few villagers here and there. Viper now with the eco lead. He goes even deeper. Realizing that this fight is starting to backfire against him, he needs to get as much eco damage done as possible before MarineLorD cleans him up and then goes across to his own base.
I mean, initially it looked pretty bad for Viper because he lost so many knights before killing a single villager, but now look at the amount of villagers that MarineLorD has lost. For a moment, I thought that MarineLorD is actually going to benefit from this fight because he was about to clean up Viper's entire army, but the eco damage that has been done is tremendous. So if Viper can now buffer out a counterattack, he's gonna be in a great spot. This being said, the knight numbers are now scary, and I feel like MarineLorD knows that he needs to retaliate for this one. Viper's response is gonna be Spearman. He knows that he needs to stop this counterattack, and if he does, he is playing from a massively advantageous position.
And this was a gambit. This was intentional. Make no mistake, folks, MarineLorD, he had a scout in the mixer. He saw the knights going in. He waits until Viper goes past the tree line intentionally. Now, this is a heavy gambit, though. You can see the difference, 69 to 87. He needs to be fast, and Viper's already reacting. The walls are going up. The keeper's going up. He's looking to enclose himself before the opportunity arises, but MarineLorD, he might just be quick enough. Palisades, he didn't commit multiple villages to this, so they'll be able to flood through. Question is, what damage can they do? First night line. Looking to hold in a choke point. Keep is going to be complete. MarineLorD, the timing might be off from this. The clash of swords, the attack speed buff coming out for Viper. With the assistance of the Keep, it's going to give him an edge. And the only choice MarineLorD has is to split off with a small group, go raiding into the eco, and retreat with the main force. It ends up being a fantastic trade for Viper.
Indeed, you pointed out it was a massive gamble that he has taken, but it was a smart gamble and it paid off big time. He knew fully well that he was going to lose his military numbers, so he has to capitalize on that. He has to start killing villagers and then buffer up the counterattack. But now he's got the spearmen out, and that is going to be a great fight for him. He's massacring MarineLorD's forces here.
He's just getting skewed here. The choke points between the racks are working to the edge of Viper here. It means even with a few spearmen coming out, MarineLorD isn't seeing maximum DPS. It's a traffic jam. And it is going to be a traffic jam where he gets ran over, because now you look at the eco lead, you look at the military situation, MarineLorD, he had a huge advantage in night count. It's starting to diminish. On top of that, we haven't even looked at the health of the remaining knights. I guarantee you several of them are limping away barely alive.
Yeah, most of those knights are likely heavily damaged out there. Reinforcements are new, but look at that. That's like, the average condition has to be around 50% at best.
I mean, honestly, it's about to get worse. The brace! He goes in for the fight. There's so many low health knights, though. This is not a good trade. MarineLorD, just watch those knight numbers. It's only staying at this number because he's replenished them back in base. But heavy damage once again done. And if you look at Viper's military count, and if you look at his knights, most of them are full health.
Yeah, and the thing is at this point...
more damage.
The thing is at this point that, of course, you lost that mass of spearmen, but you did so much damage on those knights, and now you look at that. Viper still has some leftover knights. He's going to use their mobility for raiding, and now his primary force is going to be, plain and simple, a flood of spearmen. Response from MarineLorD could be longbows to this one, but the problem that MarineLorD is facing is that now he's behind by 16 eco.
It's also the transition, right? Like, if you look at his wood numbers, he hasn't been gaining that much wood per minute. Each one of those archery ranges is going to be 150 wood. You can rely on the council hall to a certain extent, but we saw how many racks Vipers dropped. What was it, 5, 6? To reach critical mass of longbowmen to deal with this composition from Viper is going to take time, and it's time you do not have. He goes in again, small contingent of knights, looking onto the villages once more. Spearmen in the meantime, buffering away, ensuring MarineLorD cannot get access to the midfield resources. And it means that at this rate, he's going to be starved in his own base.
Yeah, indeed. It's just so many places for MarineLorD to pay attention to. He also started teching into man-at-arms, or actually, that's Viper. Viper knows. Viper knows that, okay, MarineLorD is responding to my spearmen with the longbows. I will start going for my men-at-arms. And behind this one, both players thinking about Imperial Age here. In fact, Imperial Age now coming in here for MarineLorD. I assume it's the Wingard Palace back in his base, although Berkshire Palace in the current scenario would not be an unprecedented choice either.
I think he's probably going to go for the greedy choice just because he's enclosed, right? There's no quick access to his base. He holds choke points. That's the only way that you can get in. And it means you have to go through this flurry of spears. And we've already seen how awkward that can be from MLorD. But MLorD, let's see if he goes for it. Tech ups available on both sides. The question is, what are we going to get? It looks like it's going to be the... Is that Berkshire? Or is that Wingard? I think that's a Wingard.
That's a Wingard. That's a Wingard. I think in this scenario... Like, unless you're under massive amount of damage or pressure, the Wingard is probably the better choice.
I mean, the keep's only half complete. The Knights are going to overwhelm them here. Panic ensues. He has to retreat away. It means he won't be able to complete the Imperial Age either. There's just too many Knights here. The Spearmen are out of position. They're trying to react now. The wraparound isn't going to be quick enough. The first line of spears are gone. The Knight count still healthy at 25. He'll retreat away for the moment, but he knows he needs to get back in and delay this tech up from Viper.
Oh yeah, Viper has to sacrifice so much here to save that Wingard Palace. That almost was a disaster for Viper. It looks like he's going to push away MarineLorD, but I think MarineLorD could have committed. MarineLorD could have killed so many villagers on that landmark. Borderline denied, because now you see he's taking the fight in the middle of the map and he's winning it quite decisively with the longbows and knights. He could have done that right next to the Wingard Palace. Looks like Viper is going to get away with this one because the castle goes up, and with that, he should have enough buffer here for him to get the Wingard Palace up, or is he?
No, he hasn't. He hasn't. The problem is he went for the keep first. MarineLorD gambled on this. He knew he needed the defense. He's going to go in and delay this further. And even if you get it up, what's the difference right now? I think MarineLorD, like, he has to be clear. Yeah, he's already up. He already cracked Imperial Age. And he's just been waiting for that tech up to come through now. He's already getting into the enclosures. He's getting the upgrade for the longbows. He's just looking to push it all out. And it means that Viper, in a situation where he should have teched up first, he feels like he's 30 seconds behind.
Yeah, and that deficit is going to be so big because, as you pointed out, it's enclosures coming in. It's the elite longbow upgrade already on the way for MarineLorD as well. Elite Knights could be a reality, and Viper is going to be so much behind technology-wise. And if you look at the eco counts, it no longer really matters that there's a slight villager lead for Viper, especially if you take the fact that MarineLorD has one extra relic. So the villager advantage that Viper was able to build up with that big raid that he has had, that's going to be lower and lower of importance in the coming minutes.
Especially considering that MarineLorD is floating a qualitative solution, right? He's been pushing Knights. Now, they are pricey, but if you start to reach pop cap, it's just more efficient, right? Logically, it's just a unit with more health, it can do more damage, it has more mobility. So as it stands right now, MarineLorD, he's playing from a position of strength with these delays, and you can see what he does with it. He plays out into the midfield, understanding this will eventually turn into a resource drain on the gold and on the wood, and he wants to be well positioned to exploit that.
Oh, here we go, another 7-hour-long game.
Hey, man, it's a little bit different this time. Someone brought ponies to the party. And ponies, they tend to speed things up a little. However, look at the risk Viper's taking. Like, he shifts out of position like this. It means if he gets raided in his base, that's the majority of his army right now. So he won't be able to defend himself if MarineLorD now goes in with the Knights. But
That's not just the majority of his army, that's his entire army out there on the north, and MarineLorD could actually commit against the base indeed. Now he's gonna have to address that problem, but the Knights could just run past these buildings and get straight into the farming eco, because that's what you want to raid here.
Wow.
And that's exactly...
He's reacting.
Yeah, he's reacting to this.
He waits for the upgrades. Yeah, he gets the elite status on all of them. Golden hats all around, silver hats for the longbowmen. And now he's picked apart Viper. Remember, this is a full melee mosh pit. He doesn't have any ranged units here. Stabbing on the Knights is going to snipe a few of them out. But now they'll wrap around. They go in the other side. There's the elite status now for the Knights as they'll chase in onto the man-at-arms. Spearmen will be addressed by the longbows. Maybe a small amount of eco damage will be done to MarineLorD's base, but it's superficial at best.
Yeah, it is going to be minimal damage inflicted, and the price for Viper is going to be huge here. He's losing a lot of army. Now, truth being told, this is buying him time to get his own upgrades, so at least MarineLorD is not attacking him right now. But as you pointed out, this fight was great for MarineLorD. Took down most of the men-at-arms and most of the spearmen without losing almost anything out of his own forces. And his army is just growing and growing, not just in numbers, but also in quality.
Yeah, and here's the thing. After that, Viper will go, haha, war, it's population control. As he instantly replaces him, he's back up to 45. That's all well and good, Mr. Snake. But you might want to look at the difference between your surplus eco and MarineLorD's, because he's reaching that point where he starts to just build up the bank of MLord, while Viper is once again just scraping by on a limited amount in surplus, right? Like, it looks like he should have a lot as well. He's got 3,000 food per minute. But it's because he has to invest it so quickly in replacing the lost arms.
Yeah, I mean, 3,000 food per minute is no joke, though. So, in the long run, Viper's food eco is really going to skyrocket him in terms of army as well. But, yeah, as you see, he's got the second harvesting upgrade on the food. The concern right now for Viper is that growing number of Knights, and his base is not stonewalled. Those are just palisades. Those Knights will eat those for breakfast, and then they will just head straight into that farming eco, and that 3,000 food per minute will drop to 30 in just 30 seconds, really.
His late game torching is no joke. Villager baits out the spearmen, they'll get the brace out. There's too many Knights here, it's going to be a massacre. It means that you're not going to be able to easily get control on this right side, and this is the frustration when you're an open map like Dry Arabia and you're the one pushing foot soldiers. If your opponent just splits up and looks for clues with these Knights, you're going to be dancing left, right, and center, constantly trying to catch up.
First trebuchet is now hitting the field, and some bombards as well for Viper. What is he doing?
I believe someone was drunk and took it out for the evening, and it seems to have been crashed. Because that should not have been that far forward alone.
And that's the other upside that you're getting from those Knights. You can dive in and snipe siege weapons, whereas on the other side, if you take a look at the forces of Viper, those are men-at-arms, those are spearmen. They have a much more difficult time taking down all those siege weapons, and now it looks like a couple of Knights will make it into the eco of Viper. The unit composition is looking better and better for MarineLorD, but Viper is also 200 population pretty much, and he's establishing the forward position here.
I mean, this is the issue with what Viper's done. He's got what I call the leaky bucket. He's always got this gap into his base, and even if one Knight creeps through, it doesn't need to kill anything. It just needs to idle you for 20 seconds. That hit into your eco is going to add up as the game goes on. Right now, the keeps are adding up as MarineLorD, trying to establish control on the east side, draws attention to the west, and this is where Viper, he gets into this kind of stuck, bogged down siege state. And they're in. Yep, here it comes.
That's a diversion.
The Palisades, the bonus so fast. Viper hasn't reacted to this just yet. The pings are going off in 3 different locations. I don't think he's realized. He'll finally peel back now. It's too late to repair. And the flood through, the idle economy. Look how many villagers run for safety. And look how many are going to be massacred on the exit.
Ah, such a great diversion by MarineLorD. He pulled up the first trebuchet, says, okay, I'm going to distract you. And there's the counterattack, but there's a keep with potentially boiling oil, longbows with a network of citadels. Oh, I think Viper is taking so much more damage.
I think the Bullet isn't up just yet, but like he has no quick answer to the keep itself. Yeah, was never researched here. And the Lombos, they're start stepping. Remember that this is the ranged meta right now. It's the age of archers. And this pew pew effect is a little bit too strong. All the time spent running by Viper, barely any time spent doing damage.
Yeah, at least he forced MarineLorD to react to this one, so most of the cavalry was pulled off from the eco of Viper. That's the only positive thing here for the Snake. But the castle gets taken down here, and at least Viper lives to see another day, and that's probably the best thing that he could hope for after seeing those knights breaking into his eco like that.
Well, you know, we call him the Snake for many reasons, but right now, MarineLorD is this livery bugger, right? The amount of times he's sneaking in these knights, it's just once again, just to reiterate, you don't have to kill anything. You just have to stop them gathering. And you can see what happens on the eco situation. Like, Viper should be ahead on food because he's had better income for the last several minutes, but it's just not the case.
Yeah, and that's going to make it very difficult to replenish all those expensive man-at-arms that are getting taken down, because man-at-arms are food heavy, so if you deplete your food bank, you're gonna be in a tough spot replenishing those. And it looks like now we're seeing crossbows being added by Viper, which is all nice and good, but guess what? They will struggle against the longbows quite badly.
Absolutely. The Knights, while they're still alive, look for their value on the trebuchets. One does get sniped down. Arch in the meantime, stepping back. Need to be careful of the Mangonel. Just make sure you don't click all on top of each other, so a million units on one tile, and you should be fine. I'll never stop mocking Mangonels in their current state. Man-at-arms. Like, it just looks so pitiful. Melee versus range just looks so pitiful to watch. Like, I'm almost there. Yeah, we're just going to walk back. I'm almost there. Yep, just going to walk back again. But now he walks forward. Knights in, holds back the enemy for the moment, and the peppering comes in on the crossbow line. Longbow starts to backstep. Some ground being gained, but more reinforcements coming in from the north from MarineLorD as he tries to stab into that Mangonel. And the crossbows, they're the difference maker right now. It's the reason Viper's gaining ground, and it's going to force MarineLorD back.
Yeah, and the thing is right now for MarineLorD is that he doesn't have a counter unit here, so sure thing the crossbows will struggle against the longbows, but if the man-at-arms can tank up the damage, then it's perfectly fine. And the longbows, they will struggle against the man-at-arms, the knights will struggle against the crossbows, and that's the big problem of having a big ball of longbows. They will struggle against heavily armored units like that, and this is the reason why Viper is gaining so much ground now.
So what you're saying is MarineLorD needs more walls. I think at the end, right?
I think MarineLorD needs more horsemen, to be honest, but does he have the time to make that transition?
Boy, it's going to be a tough one. Has he got the space? Has he got enough stables out? I mean, this is the thing. When the longbows get behind the walls, they're comfortable, right? The crossbowmen don't have enough range. The man-at-arms can't touch him. But you need those static defenses. Otherwise, I agree. The horseman is a better choice if you want to play loose on the map, which is what he was doing. In fact, that's the big difference. Where have the knights been? What have they been doing this whole time? Oh, there they are. They sniped out 1 or 2 trebs. But how much ground did you surrender over to Viper in the process?
Yeah, a lot of ground was gained here by Viper, and Viper is capitalizing on that big time, capping the sacred site, destroying key infrastructure that made it much easier for MarineLorD to replenish his lost units. And you see, so many of those knights are getting massacred by the crossbowmen, so the cost efficiency of these fights are not spectacular for MarineLorD, a player that is struggling to get a lot of gold in his bank, and that's going to make it difficult to replenish those knights as well.
Yeah, and you can see the military difference. Like Viper, it is cheaper. And now he goes for the premium because he's been saving up all of his pennies for Christmas. The hand cannoneers in the mixer. Able to massacre through the knights. If they can access them with the knights, they see an opportunity on the Mangonels. That's a freebie. Split up to look for clues, but now they're going to peel back. They do not want to be in range of the crossbows and the hand cannoneers. The proxy base is already dead, so really what are you fighting for at this stage? You just need to get back behind the walls, hold for the moment, and hope that you can raid him because he still does have the small contingents of knights raiding on the east and west side.
Yeah, but that's the only thing that he has, actually. Because if you take a look at MarineLorD, now is full defense mode for him. He's still building up his knight numbers, got a reasonable amount of longbows as well, but as you pointed out, once you see those hand cannoneers hit the field, that's where things are going to start getting ugly for MarineLorD, because population efficiency is going to be a factor as well for Viper.
We had such high hopes for the Vanguard cavalry. They won't make their way through, though. You spearmen will push him away, and that was the only offense that MarineLorD had going. I mean, you've got to give so much credit to Viper. This may only be game 1, but remember that he's been playing for several hours already. You know, we said warm up versus exhaustion. He's looking warmed up because it's not easy to contain your opponent with a slow force like the composition he's built when they are actively pushing knights 24/7.
Yeah, Viper's timing here to switch to the level of aggression that he currently has was perfect. I mean, he diagnosed that, okay, he sent in the knights to my base, and Viper knew he was in trouble. He sent the infantry to the other side, and it was like, okay, I need to push this one right now. And MarineLorD actually decided to disengage from the base of Viper. He pulled back all the cavalry to react to that, but then the crossbows arrived to the battlefield, and ever since that, Viper had the better unit composition because he had a tool to destroy those knights, whereas on the other side, there was no response from MarineLorD to the combination of men-at-arms and crossbows.
And you can see how awkward it gets from MarineLorD because he's not full hard into the cavalry anymore, because it's actually now like a reasonable composite. It means that he has to stay by, right? He can't just rush out. He hasn't got the assistance of a counter to a counter. Instead, it always feels like these knights are forced to retreat the Lombos. They can never dive deep because the hand cannoneers and crossbows are picking them apart, while the Lombos can never get in range to assist them.
And Viper is just everywhere. Look at the right side. He's got some men-at-arms there killing the villagers of MarineLorD. MarineLorD has been dropping in terms of villager count as well. And that gold income per minute is also dropping. Finally, a transition to horsemen comes in. But is it too late now for MarineLorD to salvage this?
Love to see. He can ignore the man-at-arms and move past if he chooses. Right now, just holding as a front line. Needs to be a little bit careful. Crossbowmen, although they don't get bonus damage, they do still sting in quantity like this, especially when you go in range. That was what he was trying to avoid. He kept back on the MAA because he didn't want to trick the attack speed. As soon as the attack speed is buffed up, Viper is clearly winning these fights.
Yeah, and that's the thing here for Viper. He's got his bonus as well over here with the towers or castles, and the flood of infantry is just never ending. MarineLorD is bleeding villagers on the right side. Viper even triggers the sacred side countdown over here. Everything is now under the control of Viper here, and he's got insane momentum in this one.
This is absurd. He's defending his base. He's basically in his base, and you're now seeing what he's doing to address the problem here. The outpost, it gets denied. This is important. Notice that one side is glowing gold. That is not the observer mode being biased, folks. It's the fact that the attack speed buff was there the entire time for Viper. Meanwhile, MarineLorD didn't even have it in his own base. Wow. And just as quickly as you think you're gaining ground, Viper says, oh no you don't. He goes back in again. These horsemen wasting so much time on the man-at-arms and spears when really need to get on the crossbows. That's the difference maker. That's what's clearly winning these fights for Viper. Yeah, it might not be getting bonus damage, but it's being ignored the whole way through the fight. Finally, he addresses it, the longbowmen. Peppering into the crossbows. They will trade effectively. But the question mark is how much has been spent on this. Look at the numbers. MarineLorD, he's drained himself to the bone. Only 200 surplus food at any given time on a person who has 3,000 food per minute.
Yeah, he's getting dry over here. And now finally his longbow's got the attack boost, and now you see Viper is going to call off his forces. But Viper also started mixing in longbows himself. He's realizing that, okay, my opponent is adding some hand cannoneers, still quite a lot of longbows to deal with. But as you pointed out, the key thing here is that Viper was able to gain so much ground with this, so much momentum, and just force so many responses from the opponent. And let's not underestimate the fact that those men-at-arms can tank up a lot of damage as well from the horsemen.
And let's consider that MarineLorD, he keeps stepping a little bit too far forward with his hand cannoneers. One of the weaknesses of his current composition, the horsemen are getting rinsed. Once that happens, what's out of position? It's your hand cannoneers, right? Your longbows have plenty of range. The hand cannoneers are the pricey unit, though. 240 resources for one of these. And it's so easy for Viper to then prioritize onto that line and get good trades economically, even if he loses a bit of ground for it.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about draining that food dry, draining that gold dry even, because keep in mind that MarineLorD is confined into his base right now, so access to gold is somewhat limited. Sure thing, you do have the farms, but that's a certain rate of gold income that you're getting from those, and that's it. If you're losing units really fast, the enclosures won't be able to compensate for all those losses.
I'm sorry, I just can't stop chuckling at the mangonels. Like, Viper knows something we don't. The damage looks pretty low, but in fairness, they have more range than the longbows, so they can easily target them out while the crossbows deal with the front line. And that's what they're doing right now. The mangonels, they're getting reasonable value because MarineLorD is actually not moving his troops right now. He's just fully static engaging. Thinks he's going to gain ground, but as we can see, Viper is matching the pace, in fact, exceeding it, because when you look at the pop cap, Viper is always there. 200, 200, 200. MarineLorD, he's shrinking down to 160 and now about to be raided on the sides.
And the positioning of those mangonels was spectacular. Behind the forest, difficult to snipe. And let's not forget, they don't have an amazing blast radius, but they do have a ton of damage. So as long as they're not getting attacked, and they are just firing volley after volley after volley, they do have a pretty high DPS, even if it's not on a lot of targets.
And you know what I think Viper's identified about this mirror matchup? Is if you both start pushing man-at-arms or bulky units that have a lot of armor, mangonels don't care. Remember that they just do the pure damage, right? So it's actually an effective solution against MarineLorD potentially going back into MAA because the English man-at-arms have a lot more armor than any other civ.
Yeah, that's a great point indeed. It's just basically that siege damage, pretty much ignoring the armor that we have on those units. Looks like Springalds are going to be the response right now for MarineLorD, and that's one of the extra added effects. You force MarineLorD to go for Springalds, which won't be useful in these direct engagements like this one.
Oh, we got Horseman now coming out in the field from MarineLorD. He's looking for the pocket ecos if he can find him. He needs to keep decap. This is opportunity. Onto the left sacred side because there's still 6 minutes left. In the meantime, holding his base, but being pushed once again past the breach into his own home base. And although Viper's army is going to be depleted on the front line, notice that that pop cap is never going down. It's always 200 at any given stage in the game.
And there is still a Sacred Site countdown coming in though. Like, it's 6.5 minutes left to go, so MarineLorD is on a serious timer here, and he made no noticeable progress towards either of those Sacred Sites.
He had an opportunity, but he stopped off on the keep. He tried to harass the villagers instead. It meant he wasn't even decapping, he wasn't even trying to. So the timer continues, 6 minutes remaining, and MarineLorD back to the drawing board, as he hasn't managed to get anywhere near 200 pop cap. He's still locked about the 160, 170 range.
Yeah, and the thing is that the moment you move out for those Sacred Sites, Viper is going to use that opportunity to break into your base. This is something that he learned from the Beastie versus himself set, if you think about that one. The moment Viper in that set moved out towards the Sacred Sites, Beastie used that window to attack the base. That's exactly what Viper is trying to mimic in here.
And you can see how MarineLorD is so desperate. He needs anything he can get. He's mining gold in the front line right now. Anyone who signed up to this job posting is insane. There's a reason it was paying good overtime. It's because you're putting yourself in the middle of a war. And that war is starting to look one-sided. Viper starting to flood in. MarineLorD no longer the strength to hold him back. The pop count shrinking and more ground being gained as the Mangonels push you back into choke points where you're definitely going to hit that clump factor of 10. Meaning actually the Mangonels going to start trading really well here.
Yeah, that's a lot of clombed up units like that and a lot of trebuchets as well getting taken down by Viper. And MarineLorD moved out to the right side to decap the Sacred Sites, and that's what we were talking about. Viper sees that and he breaks in.
Yeah, and now the Mangonels, although the AoE got nerfed, remember, they still do the same damage, so they're actually decent pseudo-sieges. You're seeing the heavy damage two Mangonels are doing to the stables right now. They're left with their own devices with no tower range. It's hard to address them, not to mention the Trebs to back them up. And we were at stage where you're hitting his production line. So MarineLorD, his army, he already can't build it quick enough. And as these buildings fall, it's going to become nigh on impossible to sustain a front line at the center of your base.
And the thing is that as long as you're trying to repel these attacks, Viper is still sitting on those free Sacred Sites. Only 4.5 minutes left to go, and instead of MarineLorD moving closer to those Sacred Sites, you get the feel that he's moving away from those at this pace.
Yeah, you notice we glimpsed that raid, but we're whoop-de-doo right now. MarineLorD cannot do enough damage for 4 Horsemen to deter Viper. I mean, Viper, he is draining himself from the food, but he has so much farmland. And they're actually neck and neck with the food. The difference is that just every piece of ground slowly going the way of Viper, and he calls it. He realizes it's over. There's no way that he's getting out of the base in the next 4 minutes. Viper will open the grand finals with a win.
Big win over here. I mean, huge win actually for Viper. Mirror matchup. And it looked so desperate for Viper for quite a long time, actually, especially with those Knights breaking into his base. It seemed like he was just going to lose 50 villagers, but then he once again went for the high upside play. He decided, okay, the Knights are in my base. I can't really do anything about that, or I need to send my entire army back to clean it up. But what if I push that keep? And the moment he took that keep down, he was the one controlling the middle of the map, and he just funneled all his infantry towards the base of MarineLorD from that point on.
Yeah, I think MarineLorD was too busy watching the Twitch Rivals Rust tournament, because this really felt like someone who's more fixated on surviving than thriving, right? Than winning. Because the detail that I come back to in this game is when he had the Knights in. You highlighted it multiple times for good reason. That was his opportunity to flood out, shut everything down, maybe lose some of your own base, but understand that Viper didn't have the mass to kill you then. Instead, he knee-jerk reacts. He goes all the way back across the map to address Viper. And it felt like from that stage on, the trades got worse and worse, right? You allowed Viper to stabilize when you actually had him off balance. I think this is just a lesson in playing to win instead of playing to survive.
Yeah, I think he tried to go for the safe play instead of a high upside play. In fact, I would love to see the villager graph on this one, because right now in the total unit count, we are seeing the dramatic, like, not even dramatic, but rather more like a consistent decline in the village or the overall population of MarineLorD. But look at that villager graph. Viper never really lost like 40 villagers, and in that raid that MarineLorD sent in, he should have lost like 40. So MarineLorD pulled off his forces. He killed like what? I think we're looking at that little dip at like what, 26 or so minutes. That's like 10 villagers maximum.